All right, so good evening and welcome. As we open this task force meeting, I'd like to welcome members of the community. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your support and interest in our work. The first item on this evening's agenda that I wanted to talk about is I would like to provide some clarification and feedback, or actually to address recent comments from the feedback that we've received from the community, both on and offline, as many of you are aware, regarding the topic of Rockburn Park. In our meeting, our first meeting on May 7th, this came up, and after I reviewed the recording several times of our meeting, there was discussion between myself and other members of the task force surrounding the inclusion of Rockburn Branch Park into our final report. Not to be addressed as a location that the task force would be exploring, but instead to be included as a type of appendix with other sites that do not meet the rubric that we have that we developed at the last meeting, and hopefully will approve this evening. It was reiterated and it was agreed upon during the discussion surrounding the executive order, and I quote, the county executive has already evaluated land in Rockburn Branch Park for a school site and concluded that this is not a viable option. Excuse me. During our time together, the task force is going to be reviewing several sites that may not fit the rubric or the parameters within the executive order. However, the task force is also charged with reporting any other findings or recommendation that the task force deems is appropriate. So this being said, for those sites that the task force believes do not meet criteria as outlined within the rubric of the parameters of the executive order, I believe that it is important for the task force to include these sites not as recommendations and not as considerations, but rather to be placed in an appendix to the final site recommendations within the report. So the reasoning for this is I believe we will not only provide clarification for our community members, but it will also be noted on the public record for future references as to why these sites are not being considered. So to give you a picture of what this would look like, we will have a report that has our recommendations. So let's just say we have sites A, B, and C that will be our final recommendations and we're going to submit. Then, because we have looked at other sites, we will be looking at several lists of sites this evening during our closed session. We need to be clear as to why these other sites, including Rockburn, are not being recommended because they do not fit our criteria. So these sites would be in a separate appendix at the end of the report. So like say sites D, E, F, and G we wouldn't be looking at. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I believe that this will not only help provide clarification to the community, but I also hope that it will provide closure to these sites not being considered, especially the topic of Rockburn Branch Park. I know that this has been an ongoing concern for many members of the community, and I definitely understand and appreciate these concerns. Our community has been divided for far too long. A high school should be a place that brings community members together, not apart. Going forward, I hope the work of all of us on this task force, in partnership with the community of Elkridge, can work together to bring our hope of finding a suitable location for a high school in Elkridge into reality. I ask community members to please, if you have any further feedback or questions for the task force, we ask that you fill out the contact form on the task force website. That information gets sent directly to Andrew's email. He shares it with me and we share it with the rest of the task force. We will be happy to review and address any comments, concerns, feedback. Are there any questions from the task force? Okay. So
Very effectively done.
I hope that we can put this to rest and we can move on with our work. All right, very good. So we actually talked about comments and questions using the task force website, and we're up for the minutes, approving the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes that were sent out? Are there any questions, comments? All right. I'm going to make the motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. The minutes have been approved. All right. And the rubric, you should have a copy of that. There was one slight error in it, which was corrected on the second page under number 2. It said what the constraints instead of what are the constraints. Not a big deal. We fixed that. So this is the copy that we will be working from.
This is posted on the
Yes.
website? Okay.
Yes.
I will post that.
So does anybody have any questions about the rubric? Anything to add?
So we did confirm that both the GECA boundaries and the Elkridge planning area boundaries are the same. So
Yes.
we're using the same.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's consistent.
It would actually appear as if they were, maybe GECA went by the Department of Planning and Zoning's definitions, or maybe DPZ went by GECA's definitions. But what I did was I just went on a map and I just kind of followed a line, and yeah, there it is.
Okay, great.
So for the purposes of the website, is there a map that can also be included?
Yes. And what we can do before going into the closed session is I can briefly show you how that map works, because it's publicly available. So we can do that when we're.
The only other thing, when I was looking at the executive order, it mentioned under number 5, anticipated costs. And I know we had some it's 5B on the executive order, and it talks about the task force shall present to the county executive, report including, and anticipated cost of purchasing suitable land parcels. I didn't know how we wanted to address that.
I don't know how you address that if site or sites you're putting forward are not yet for sale, and there's no way to determine what an asking price would be if they come up for sale.
Right. The only thing I thought is that they did have a cost for the square footage. Is that correct?
That's just for the
That's for the
building,
building.
which would be the same no matter where.
So, I mean, I think that sort of falls within, on the rubric, how would the property be acquired? You know, so if the answer to that question is purchase, I would imagine that Dave, as a real estate professional, would at least have some estimate.
I guess that's what.
You know, I mean, but I think that's sort of already, I think it's within how would the property be acquired, because we don't have an anticipated cost if, you know, it's already owned by the county, for example, and the cost might be different if we're talking about eminent domain or whatever. So I think that's probably already covered in the rubric. But it's not, you know, it's obviously something that we'll want to include in the report.
I just want to make sure we were covering all the bases, including it.
I mean, you could certainly add like a supplement 5A to say cost considerations or something if we wanted to make it clearer.
Yeah.
And I know, we'll have to talk about, like I want to mention initially, how we would do that in the report as to not, be disclosing some of those estimates. So we'll just have to think about writing that in the report. But if we want it to be clear, we can certainly add a sub bullet there. If there's other sub bullets about acquisition that need to be deleted.
I just,
Or you could just decide that's where it goes.
okay.
You know?
Okay, any other thoughts? I mean, document will be pretty fluid anyway, so it's just kind of a thought. Maybe.
Sorry. Just gonna read.
We don't have any community comments yet on the rubric, right? We haven't received any feedback, anything that we're missing.
Well, it hasn't.
That hasn't
been
been
approved,
posted,
so.
okay.
All right, Dave, did you have any feedback on the rubric that we created? You should have a copy of this.
I think it's pretty straightforward thing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We may have talked about this, and I just don't remember from the last meeting, but what do we mean by 6? Does the property contribute to plan power and the on-floor plan? What do we mean by those houses?
Is that the, when they redid the zoning process or the master plan for Elkridge?
Yeah, that's the
County.
rubric.
Your plan has the whole county.
I mean, I think one potential idea is if there were an industrial property or some other property along Route 1, which we, maybe if a school were to go there, if we deem that perhaps that contributes to revitalization or some other positive community asset in some way. I think that's where we were coming from on that, but.
Contributes to the environment by having the kids have less travel to the school.
Right, and just having that resource
Right.
there in the community.
That we could make it fit.
Right.
I was reading that Plan Power 2030 earlier today, so
Right.
pretty much any school site you find is a fit plan. I promise.
All right, any other questions? Feedback? All right, well, I'm going to make a motion to approve this rubric to be used by the task force.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Rubric has been approved. Right. The next part of our meeting, we're actually going to be closing the meeting to discuss.
Were we going to look at the interactive map before we close?
Yes.
We can, sure, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, sure.
Andrew brought it up at the
Let's
beginning,
straighten it out.
I thought.
Okay.
Never
You're fine.
put myself in there, so I thought.
Sure, all right, well, why don't we look at that map and
I only brought it up because technically execution of the map is not on the closed session agenda.
absolutely, absolutely. Sorry, I missed that conversation where I was in the middle of a different conversation.
Simply, I mean, so this is the interactive map. I'm actually, I'm just going to show you how to get there. All together. Pretty much if you go to howardcountymd.gov, go to the white page for the Department of Planning and Zoning. And then over on the side here, you'll see a tab, interactive map. There you go. And this is using GIS software, GIS programming, to allow you to add different layers to this map. So maybe we want to look at property boundaries for a map. Once you zoom in, zoom in a little more, you can see but then you can see, once you click on the yellow square, you can get all the information about it, who owns it, what's its name. You can even go even further to find out if they're paying their property taxes and how much the property sold for, when it was sold, to whom and by who. All that information is publicly available. And that's even the case for private properties. I just figured you'd be perspective person. Perspective, not clicking on the private property. And you can put in other layers, so we can zoom out here. And we could even, if we wanted to add a layer that's not here, for example, I know just by using this, the locations of the schools is not a default layer, so all we need to do is click Add Layer. Over here we can type in schools, for example. We could even see school districts. So maybe let's add that. Let's add a high school district as a layer. And then we could even add where all of the elementary, high schools, and middle schools are in the county. We can move this side. And then, for us, we want to know where's Elkridge, and I know also that is not a default layer, so we can just type in planned zones. Planning zones. Planning areas, here we go. All right, and there we'll see is Elkridge. Right here. So we can now zoom in.
Is that good in Hanover? Okay. Get away from us.
So if you were to actually look at that map and kind of follow the arrow, follow the line, you'll notice it is based on the GECA definitions. So you can see all the high schools and the high school districts that encompass Elkridge. And if we were to zoom even further, we could see all of the properties
High schools.
in Elkridge. And that is how you can use the interactive map. There are many other layers. We could even view this map as an aerial photo.
Ooh. Like that.
Let's see for any other resources that are good for us. You can also have it highlight preservation easements, what is considered open space, what is under forest conservation easement, where is there a park. Let's see. I mean, if we really wanted to get into it, I'm sorry? Let's see.
It's environmental, maybe, there should be a drop down.
A drop down for environmental?
I think so, or no. I think it says something about environmental or public works or something.
Oh, okay, yep, that'll do it. Public works, yep, so here in the public works, there's a floodplain layer we can add.
I was clicking all kinds of stuff.
You know,
I was so confused. I'm like, whoa.
If we wanted to make sure our students were focused and not being distracted by trash, we could find out what is the trash, route.
I will say when I was on it earlier, I don't know if it was just because I was on my work computer, but it kept asking me to log in,
That
sign in, and if I clicked it like 4 times, it went away. But just so if anybody goes on there, don't kind of just say cancel like 4 times.
So there's Elkridge for you. And all of its, so if we were to click here, for example, you can see that's an open space, and it also is in the Howard High School District. And that's just only because we're this far above. As we can zoom in, maybe we click this little pink part here, and we'll notice that's a floodplain. It's also part of open space. floodplain information, and it just happens to be in the Howard High School District. And the more you zoom in, the more information you can click to find out.
Awesome, thank you.
Very nice.
Looks like this says actual chance flood hazard versus the pink. Pink just being designated as a floodplain. Okay.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right, so we're going to be moving into a closed session because we're going to be reviewing properties submitted by the public and also Henry County, and then Ms. Keenan, who's not here this evening, also sent us some sites for the so I'm going to make a motion to move into the closed session. Can I get a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Right? Right? Session is closed.
Yeah.
So for the next steps, we're looking at the July meeting, which is July 16th, I believe. And we're going to be bringing in someone from the Department of Recreation and Parks to talk about program open space. And then after that happens, then we approve the minutes from this meeting. We'll be going back into a closed session and we'll be having a presentation from the Office of Law to discuss the processes of eminent domain and then questions about submitting recommendations for properties, how we go about doing that as far as we don't want to compromise locations and properties in the report with any future negotiation that the county could have going forward. So how should we label these when we're talking and discussing in an open session, things like that. Does anybody have any questions?
So we're moving, it's not on the second, on the 16th, the
It
third.
is.
Third November. Okay.
I think it's important to realize the program open space part of that meeting may be difficult to arrange, as right now we are in full process of responding to the Elkridge City flood.
Yes.
The Office of Law one probably won't be too difficult to arrange. However, Recreation and Parks has pretty much been fully focused on that process. So I will bring that up. I won't bring it up tomorrow when I see them, but I will work on that one.
That's fine.
So we'll just revise the agenda if we need to postpone that.
Exactly.
Another time.
And when would we be bringing back all sites that we're going to individually potentially add to this list?
So
I thought maybe we start.
So, right, if there's any sites, we could put that in the meeting minute, we could put that in the agenda
For July.
for July. Any feedback we get from the public regarding sites, and also any task force members who find sites that they would like to present and close.
I wonder if that meeting, if that would create too large of a meeting for July, as we have open space slated, we have Office of Law slated, and then on top of that, other properties identified and considered by task force members?
Well, if we don't do open space, why don't we play it by ear and see if we can get open space, someone from the
Okay.
arts here, and if we can't, then we'll add that. And then, if they give us attend the meeting and do a presentation, then we'll put that off to the August meeting. Does that sound right?
And should we, not naming the sites, but should we let somebody know that we have, I have 2 sites that weren't on this list that I think we should look at. So that way you would know how many we need to review in closed session. Is that helpful?
Sure, we can do that. That's also when we go into closed session and we talk with, oh, you're talking about the number, not the me.
So for planning purposes of the meeting, we would know, okay, do we have 15 sites? Because
Right,
that's like
yes,
it's on
I
the
know what
meeting.
you're saying.
Or do we have 2? And if it's, that would drastically alter the agenda.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Do you want those by a certain date?
Let's see, today is, why don't we say by the end of this month?
So if we
So
identify
by-
any additional sites.
Correct, so
Send
by
it
June
by-
29th, yes. And that gives a couple weeks to do some research.
But we're not actually sending anything, we're just telling you,
Oh,
I have any X
right,
number of
correct.
sites that I would like to discuss.
Correct, correct. And then we'll meet
Earlier time.
kind of earlier time. Figure out how we want to do it.
Is someone going to collect the forms we fill out for those
Sure.
properties?
I just think that is. Give them to you. Any others? Have one. Yes, sir. All right, any other questions, comments?
If we do, next time, end up deciding to discuss sites, could we have like an update? I don't know, Dave, if there's all the information you could possibly get that you don't already know about, maybe at least the ones we've talked about.
What else would we do?
I don't know, whatever we would need to fully, I don't know, like, specifics and
Anything else you might be able to find?
cost, stipulations, anything that goes into it.
The only thing I think that I would really find out is
The
the
one
interest
that
of UPS.
Right.
The interest of
UPS.
particular
actually-
property, yes.
Right.
We're in our position.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions from? Okay. All right, I'd like to make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? This meeting has been